Hi, in today's video I'm going to be covering using surfraw with a FZF prompt inside w3m. In previous videos I showed you how we can start w3m and launch a prompt so we can submit search queries to different browsers. Now if you want to launch w3m, you can't just type w3m and press return because it's going to print out the help. So you either have to give a URL or start it with the -v or -b option for your bookmarks, so w3m-b. I can now type a keyboard shortcut to bring up a prompt like this. Search for video, Linux, and get my search results. And I can then open these with MPV player, queue them up, send the audio to MPD. If there were text results, I could pipe them into readability to remove all the cruft from the web pages. But the issue is that I've got to go through a couple of key presses to actually get to the prompt. So basically, instead of having to type w3m-b and then press a keyboard shortcut like that, I wanted to reduce the steps so that I go straight to the prompt. So what I've done is create a little script called WS, standing for web search. The reason I called it WS is because it doesn't conflict with any other binaries on the system, and also the keys are right next to each other. So I just type WS and I go straight into the prompt, and that's going to open up in w3m. So rather than having to type w3m-b and type a keyboard shortcut, I can just type WS and get straight into the prompt. And now that I'm in w3m, I can type the XS keyboard shortcut like that and bring up another search engine. And it just makes it a lot easier because when I open w3m, I'm probably going to want to browse for something, so why not jump straight to the browser rather than going through the bookmarks and having to press keyboard shortcuts. I'll show you how I accomplished that. So sometimes w3m doesn't like to quit. So basically what I have is the w3m script. Let me see. So this is the w3m and surfraw FZF prompt that comes up when I press XS in the on the keyboard when w3m is open. And basically what this does is it shows a list of the LVs, which are the search engines for surfraw, and basically it then creates a second prompt for your search query. And finally what it does is it copies that search query to the keyboard, the clipboard rather, and w3m opens it. So basically what I did was I took this chunk of code and just reordered it. So bin ws. So basically it's exactly the same apart from this bottom line here, and what I'm doing is I'm launching w3m with the -t option, telling it it's text HTML, and then passing in this section of code here, and that's going to contain the search engine string and query that we've submitted with the FZF prompt. So it's going to contain the LV you've selected, whether that's Google, DuckDuckGo, or something like Ask Jeeves or whatever, and also the query that you're passing to that search engine. So basically this is the same piece of code as in the script inside w3m, but what it does is it allows us to launch the search query and then display it in w3m instead of launching w3m and then running the search query. So that's the bit of code, and this is where I've put the uploaded it to my bin directory. And so what I'll do is just basically go through the setup again. So by default at the moment, and just shift to the desktop, the other thing I should mention is a guy called Brian was commenting on a previous video saying, you know, it'd be nicer if the text was larger, because normally I increase the font size of the terminal. But when you do that, what happens is it actually breaks the layout in W3M. It will break the table layout, and the images will shift out of the table, and the whole page will be broken, basically. So if you increase the font size and launch W3M, basically it breaks. So instead of running W3M shift dash shift B and then pressing a keyboard shortcut like so, what I do instead is just type WS, and it takes me straight to the search settings, so I can select the LV I want to search with. Type that in, type in my query, and it loads up the page. So it's just cutting out some of the steps to actually get to the search engine sort of input. So as I said, rather than launching W3M and then going into pressing a keyboard shortcut to bring up the search prompt, just launch the search prompt and then open the page with W3M, and it saves some keyboard shortcuts. And again, once you're in W3M, I can just press XS to bring up the same prompt. Like so. So I can still launch the prompt from within W3M, but it just makes it easier to actually just type WS, go straight to this, and search for what I'm after. So that's basically how we can remove some keyboard shenanigans and not have to type as much every time we want to actually search for something with W3M, because my thinking is if I launch W3M, I'm going to want to search for something, so why not just bring up the search prompt straight away and then open the results with W3M instead of opening W3M and then searching. This makes more sense to me. So that's basically how we did that, and this is a code again. As I said, basically first of all we print out the LVs. The LVs are the search engine scripts, surfraw for different search engines. And then once we've done that, we create a second FCF prompt which captures the user input for the search query. And I'm doing this instead of using something like read. You know, you can do read and get user input, which was something that Got Bloot was doing in his videos. But I found you can actually replace the read command with an FCF input. And also the other thing is the key map. You can find the some of these key maps, yeah, like for, yeah, this is the one down here. So what I'm doing is I'm using the read shell option here inside W3M and launching that script I just showed you, the to bring up the prompt inside W3M to search for stuff. And then the second script actually grabs the URL from the primary keyboard clipboard. And basically we have to use read shell instead of shell, because if you use command shell, it's going to prompt you to click OK. But if you use read shell, it will remove that prompt. So that's another thing that you need to set up. So that's setting up the prompt inside W3M, and this is the prompt inside the terminal that opens the results with W3M. It's just basically a simple shell script. You just put that in your bin directory, and once you've done that, as I said, you'll be able to just type WS or call it whatever. Reason I didn't call it something like www is because if I type www, you see there are already existing commands for that, and it would sort of get confusing. So WS doesn't conflict with anything else, and the keys are right next to each other. So just type that, and I'm into the search prompt. And that's how we can remove some of the keyboard input to actually get to this stage, rather than having to type 7 or 8 characters to launch W3M and then click a keyboard shortcut. Just press one, just type WS, and we get straight to the prompt, and we can then search for whatever we want, Linux apps or whatever, and we get our results there. And again, once we're inside this, we just type the XS keyboard shortcut to bring up the prompt, and we can do the same thing again. And the reason I didn't use the same keyboard shortcut inside W3M and within the terminal, because there are actually lots of programs that start with XS, like Excel, Xset, etc., etc. So I try and keep my own commands unique, so they don't conflict with other things, and I don't launch another program accidentally. So basically, again, just WS on the keyboard to launch it, and then once we're inside W3M, I just type XS on the keyboard, and it brings up the prompt. So that's basically just improving the experience a bit, make it, us old lazy people don't want to have to type that and then type that. I'd rather just be able to type that, go straight to results, and then get the results displayed in W3M. So this isn't W3M running now, this is just the surfraw prompt. So this corresponds to this section here, this prefix LV grep FCF prompt to search with. That's this section here. And the next section is this down here, get user input using echo FCF prompt set to the LV name. So we create a variable called input. And basically what we're doing is we get this to work. The trick is running echo without anything and piping it into FCF. And what that does is that then basically creates a sort of a read line kind of prompt. Instead of using the read command, it basically just echoes nothing into FCF. We just capture the input in FCF and store it in input. So, Linux, yeah. So that would be equal to Linux. And what this section down here does, it then opens W3M with the -T option, saying it's going to be text HTML, and this is going to be the surfraw, and it's basically going to print out the query using the -P option, and it's going to print out the LV, which is the search engine we're going to search with, and our input, which is what we're searching for, and basically launches that into W3M. So that's how we can just sort of repurpose some code and have a nice surfraw prompt on the command line without having to go through the hassle of typing that, because that's just really annoying. Having to not being able to start the W3M without having to type -B or -V. So it just makes it quicker, and stops me having to type W3M-B every time I want to search for something in the terminal. So that's just for me, because I'm lazy and wanted to reduce the keystrokes. So as I said, I'll put the script up here, and basically you can just stick that in your bin directory, call it whatever you want, and it will then basically launch the prompts in the terminal and then pass the query on to W3M.